Welcome back, everyone. Tonight we'll focus on what lies ahead for Nigeria in 2027, and we're joined by a key voice from the ruling party, Dr. Felix Moka, the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, who will help us unpack how the APC is responding to the growing wave of political opposition, but also explore how the APC plans to convince voters that it remains the better option heading into 2027 and what its economic roadmap really looks like beyond the talking points. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Right. Thank you very much for having me.
You know, truthfully, I do not envy you or the position you occupy at the moment. I mean, it looks like you have a lot of work on your hands. First, the forces are here, retired politicians, the president's former allies or still allies, and you know, former party chieftains have come together to say they want to unseat Bola Tinubu in 2027. And also, another job is for you to continue to remind Nigerians that APC is the best option. So how are you, Dr. Felix?
Thank you so much. I'm doing very well.
All right.
Well, nothing that is going on in our polity is surprising. It's to be expected in a democracy. After all, democracy is really about contestation of ideas. And democracy begins even within the party itself, which is why you have that system of party primaries, where members of the same party who subscribe voluntarily to the tenets, the objectives, the vision, the values of the party, actually compete with one another for supremacy of ideas, out of which members of the party who are eligible select those who fly the flag of the party. So if contestation within the party, internal democracy within the party is an inherent part of democracy, you can imagine what it is when you're dealing with external actors, people who are competing for power, because that's the whole essence of political parties, is to compete for power in addition to the secondary issues of governing, because unless you win and win power, you cannot govern. Now, having said that, so nothing is strange. And I think that we are living through a time in our country where our democracy is maturing, and maturing really quickly. Now, quite contrary to some of the very idle and I think...
They say democracy is in danger.
That's exactly my point. Yes, those who would prefer to vilify the government as a strategy to impress Nigerians will say that. But, where else do you find the sort of activity, endless flurry of activity of people who disagree with the ruling party or with the president of the country, who disagree sometimes for no reason. They just choose to disagree. And they are able to disagree to the extent that some of them even announce programs of a shadow government.
But when you say they disagree for no reason, I mean, one of their major points is, apart from trying to unseat the president, is that Nigerians are angry and the Nigerians are hungry. Isn't that a valid point?
No. You see, I'm very sensitive when I'm faced with a question like this, because I don't want to speak about Nigerians and their right to feel as they choose and to feel what they feel. But the fact of the matter is that how Nigerians feel today, they felt 20 years ago, quite frankly. They felt at the dawn of this new democracy, this dispensation, they felt under the military dictatorship. Now, the point is that it's not just about Nigerians. Quite frankly, citizens of many other countries, even countries that boast of far stronger, more developed in economic systems, also may, in fact, you may use the same language in reference to them. Many Americans are not entirely satisfied with the country. It is normal. It's to be expected.
But the APC came with a renewed hope agenda.
And that's the renewed hope that this government is in fact delivering. This president, more than any president before him, I think has done more, far more, in 2 years, than any other president has done in the history of our democracy. That is incontrovertible. And I'll tell you why. Because, this is not the first president of Nigeria who was confronted with serious challenges of governance, faced with an economy that was, simply sitting on the precipice without even the capacity to run itself, without, resort to external borrowing. Now, the country was living off of less than 5%. of his revenues, using that for itself, between paying for subsidies and servicing our debts. We didn't have any money. We're borrowing to pay salaries. And of course, the last government unfortunately resorted to the so-called ways and means to again finance a lot of the government expenditure. But this president came along without hesitating on the day of his inauguration, decided to toe the path of leadership to confront these problems that many presidents before him simply ignored or chose to just kick to the curb. He said no, because he took an oath. He was going to actually make those difficult decisions. And he told Nigerians clearly, he said, look, this will not be easy because the problems were left to fester for so many years. So it had become a generational problem, transferred from one president to the other. But he said, no, on my watch, never again. And he made those decisions to take out the fuel subsidy, to float our naira, unify the foreign exchange systems. And today, we're seeing the result of that. Now, he warned that in the short term, in the interim, that those decisions will produce repercussions that will be difficult on Nigerians. And there's no other way, there's no sexy way to take out fuel subsidy, unify the naira for any country. It's not just that country. All the countries who have done it, they had to bear and face that momentary, temporary pain. And ours now, if you look at the curve, we are almost completely out of the woods.
You think Nigerians
the economy is looking up.
You think Nigerians don't understand this? Why do you think it's hard for some Nigerians to get this?
Because, look, listen, it's understandable. It's about the existential quest to live for today. Because, living for today is important. But tomorrow will always come. And so when a government decides to neglect the need to put in place, foundational good that can support the economy in the short, medium, and long term, then that is not service to country. This president is serving our country as it should.
We'll come back to governance, Dr. Moke, because the ADC had just alleged an imaginary plot by this administration and the APC to destabilize the party. ADC claimed that the state chairman in the Northeast and Northwest were summoned to a secret meeting in a plot to intimidate and coerce the leadership of the ADC. How desperate is the APC, your party?
We are not desperate. Why would we be? We have no reason to be desperate. In fact, they are desperate. They are the ones making allegations against us that is utterly baseless, completely bogus. I responded to the statement by the ADC, and I said, look, this is simple. You are making these allegations. It is your duty to provide Nigerians details of this meeting or this plot. If senior members, state chairmen of your party in the Northeast and the Northwest were invited to a meeting at which you claim they were intimidated or coerced, why is it so difficult for you as a party to tell Nigerians who those chairmen were, who they met, who invited to the meetings, where was the location of this meeting, who did they meet, what happened? It should be easy to do that, but they didn't. They simply cited some bogus credible intelligence.
But Dr. Moke, the APC
really
is not the first party to have made this allegation. The PDP said so about 3 months ago, and the PDP chieftains are still insisting that the APC is trying or forcing its governors into the party. And here in this part of the world, we say there is no smoke without fire. So what's your broader response to the notion that the APC manipulates rival parties into the APC?
You see, whether it's the ADC or the PDP or the Labour Party, none of those parties have come forward with any substantiation of this claim. And I don't know why it's so difficult. Now, these are parties that are populated by people who have held some of the highest positions in the land. These are men and women who are, some of the most, if you will, accomplished, even respected Nigerians. Why is it so difficult for them to offer one shred of evidence to support these claims? You see, they are simply making excuses for their failure, their utter failure, disgraceful failure to govern their parties and govern their parties well. Look at the PDP, completely in tatters. Labour Party, the same thing. Today, the man who was the flag bearer of the Labour Party in the 2023 election is, you know, neither a member of Labour Party nor the ADC. We don't know where he belongs because he's speculated. You know, you want to govern Nigeria, a country this massive, Africa's most populous country, and you cannot govern your teeny-weeny party, the Labour Party, or even the PDP that's, you know, bigger than the PDP, than the Labour Party. You can govern it, and you want to govern Nigeria, and you speak to the ruling party that even as large as we are, at least we are giving a good account of ourselves. We're not, you know,
but,
no party.
Dr. Moka, if you
yes.
were in the opposition party, wouldn't you be surprised that a lot of governors are moving into the APC?
Okay. Now, why? At some point in the 16 years of the PDP had upwards of 28, 30 governors who were members of the PDP, who were governors of the PDP. I don't remember, and I was a very active political person, even during that era. I don't remember a period where it was an issue that the PDP was governing with this, you know, almost absolute majority of governors in the country. So APC, right now, we, you know, have, with Governor Moeno joining, maybe 23 governors. And the same PDP that governed with nearly 30 governors will not rest. You see, it's all mischief, all completely mischievous. Nothing suggests that because, you know, Governor Moeno or my state governor, Governor Sheriff Oborowere, joined the APC. What is untoward about that? These are citizens who are free to exercise their right to associate, to make decisions. And these are governors, for that matter. My state governor, that state is about the richest state in this country. You're saying that somebody called him into a meeting, intimidated him.
And you said that's not political survivor.
Coerced him to join a party.
That's political
Who
survivor?
coerces a governor of Delta State? Deltans generally are not easily intimidated, by the way. So the idea that somebody simply waved a finger and the governor cowered and, you know, rushed into the APC, that is actually almost, you know, I don't want to say insulting, but that's
you know, the reality is that the forces are here. I mean, just a day or two, El Rufai says, your time will come and go. And apparently, he was speaking to APC leaders. I mean, I do not know if that means he has, you know, come to terms that the presidency has one more term to go. But how do you interpret such a statement?
Well, I don't make it my business to interpret, you know, the thinking of Nasir El-Rufai, because of late he's really towed a path that just, you know, almost had to imagine, you know, the rationale behind his, you know, thinking and his actions. But he's entitled to his own, you know, thinking and views. Look, constitutionally, this president was elected in 2023 to serve a 4-year term that expires in 2027, and, you know, hopefully. Which is why my party and all of us have endorsed him, basically, you know, hoping that he would, you know, step out to run the second term, so he can, you know, finish the job that he has started. So there's a reason the constitutional framers earmarked 2 terms of 4 years for a president. He's been elected for 1. So, you know, whether you're in the opposition or whatever, you cannot at least question the right of this president to run again. And based on the record that he's laid down, his bold policies, visionary policies, and what I think is beginning to become apparent to Nigerians today are farmers, for example, who are doing better than they've done in the history of, you know, our economy. Because, you know, when we all scream, as we do, that, you know, the inflation went up because of these policies and some of the aftermath, people who grow the tomato are the ones who are, in fact, smiling to the bank. Because, you know, with very almost, you know, fixed inputs into their farming and their harvest, they are able to rake in, you know, a lot of money. And that's the whole idea, is to incentivize production, people going into diverse sectors to create value, produce value and earn. Of course, those who suffer the most are those who are on fixed income. And that is a normal economic system because of the surplus labor we have in the market. And the more our companies begin to revamp and rebound, the more they employ people and mop up the labor market, even those on fixed wages in this economy, in no distant future, we find that their own fortunes will begin to, you know, again, rise and rise exponentially.
Dr. Moka, we'll come back to governance. It's not time for governance. I want us to talk about these opposition figures. Yes. I mean, when you look at those who are at the forefront of this coalition, the political figures, which of these political figures surprised you the most?
That's what? Say that again.
Surprised you the most? I mean, we saw former national chairman John Odigiri. Which of these political figures surprised you the most?
You know, quite frankly, I wouldn't say I'm surprised by any one of them, because again, I know enough about the nature, about the human condition, first of all, and the nature of democracy to know that nothing is a given. Politics is about, interests. People, have one interest today, overnight. Those interests may evolve or can evolve and in fact turn into something else. So, I think that those who have come out to identify with the opposition are doing exactly what it is they have decided they must do. So, I don't want to name any particular person to say,
your predecessor, Bolaji Abdullahi, didn't surprise you.
But Bolaji has been, flip-flopping for a long time. From whatever party he was to APC to PDP, that he's, I think, created quite, almost like sharpened his DNA for, shifting around. So he's no surprise.
Why do you think most of those who served served with former President Buhari are so aggrieved?
Look, I don't know who you're referring to in particular, right. But I think I hear...
Kindly hold on, Dr. Moka. Let's go on a break so you can, understand that question very well. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Thank you for staying with us on the program. This is Politics Tonight, and I have Dr. Felix Moka, APC National Publicity Secretary, right here in the studio. Tonight, we're discussing the emerging opposition coalition, the strength of the APC, and how both sides are positioning themselves ahead of the next general election. Thank you so much for staying with us, Dr. Moka. So right before we went on that break, I wanted you to speak to why some political figures who served under the administration of former President Buhari are so upset with President Tinubu. And talking about Babachi Lawal, for instance, who served as SGF for just 2 years and seems to have this deep-rooted bitterness towards Mr. President.
There's a reason that I called the coalition that's come around or come together to form the ADC or to fuse into the ADC as a coalition of merchants of vendetta. That's what many of them are. They are, engaging as they are, not because they have anything different or unique or even important to offer Nigerians, but they're simply venting sore because they feel like they're on the outside of government. And these are people who have become accustomed to power, who live off of the patronage that comes from power. Babachi Lawal is one of those individuals. I mean, I saw the very disturbing video of, an interview he had with one of your anchors, where he was, using some expletives, completely unprovoked. Now, this is someone who was, SGF and had left, I think, a lot of stories behind him, very ugly stories behind him in his record of service, but who today postures as one of those self-appointed saviors of Nigeria, who is so intolerant that he can't even bear to be asked a question, an innocuous question, a question that I thought was completely, proper and harmless, but he responded with, as viciously as he did. Now, these are the people who are saying that they have something to give to this country. They have nothing to give. So, now I can't tell you why they do what they do, but from what we see, what all Nigerians see, it's obvious that some of them are bitter, have, just a grudge. And
I wonder why, because, let me make reference to a statement he made in 2020. It says Tinubu, who had his tentacles spread across the corporate world, was the only man who knew where and how to raise the funds needed. He was the one that reached out to all the big men who were at the time scared of the then president, Goodluck Jonathan. These were all rich men that depended on the government's patronage, but somehow Tinubu was able to persuade some of them to support Buhari. We had so many experiences. Timothy Silva, former Minister for Petroleum Resources, and I thought we could do it, but found out we couldn't until Tinubu came in and we won the election. So if that kind of relationship existed, one continues to wonder what exactly is happening. But what do you think Nigerians need to know or do not know?
Look, what Nigerians need to know is simple. Without going into the nitty-gritty of this, the profile of these individuals, what Nigerians need to know is that these individuals are angry, they are desperate, they are angry because they are not.
El-Rufai talked about marginalization.
In power. No, El-Rufai may speak marginalization of who? Of El-Rufai, who was minister, was head of, I think it was BPE, was, a two-time minister, was, governor. Marginalization of who? Of El-Rufai. I mean, if El-Rufai is one of those people who have been offered, exceptional privilege of being in office to play his role. He was governor of Kaduna State. Everyone knows his record. The pain he inflicted on his own people in southern Kaduna. Look, I'm not the one, that's not my style, to really come at that personal level. But the point is that these people have constituted themselves into this band of desperate Nigerians who I think have become so accustomed to privilege. And so they're looking at Nigerians now and saying Nigerians are suffering, Nigerians are hungry, Nigerians are angry. No, Nigerians are not all of that. They are the ones who are hungry, who are hungry for power, who are angry.
Are they hungry?
They're hungry for power.
Okay.
And they're angry that they're not in power. And that desperation, I think, is becoming more evident. Whether it's from Atiku Abubakar, who thinks that when he was created, he was born to rule. But Nigerians were also created by God. And they are saying, we do not want you to rule us. We do not want you to be our president. So Nigerians, in their majority,
some
have
Nigerians,
spoken.
because he has the
Nigerians
supporters.
In their majority, I know what I'm saying. Nigerians in the vast majority have made clear they do not want him to rule them as president. Otherwise, how many times has he run? He will continue to run until he decides it's enough. But that's his democratic freedom.
How do you respond to those who say President Tinubu has not yet built deep trust among northern elites, hence these resistance from some of them?
No, but when you talk about northern elites, this government has many more northern leaders and elites who are with this government, who are working for this government, even those who are not working for this government, who support this government massively. So I don't think it's to be compared. The people you see who are part of this desperate movement, they're just a handful of people. The people who obviously their record is out there for Nigerians to evaluate. They're people who failed in their respective assignments to do what they're asking this president to do, or what they're saying now they're coming back to do. Take David Mark. What was his record as Senate president? Even his own people in his village did not feel anything good from his years as Senate president. So when people like that come and they...
what about Rauf Aregbesola, for instance?
What did he do? Rauf was minister of...
He was governor?
He was governor, was minister. Go to his state and ask about his record. Or, for that matter, his record as minister of the interior. What did he do? I mean, my good friend, Tunji Ojo, the current minister of the interior, has literally transformed that ministry to levels that Aregbesola could not have imagined, during his tenure. See, these are people who failed in their assignments, in the very high offices they occupied, didn't justify themselves, but who today, years after they've left, all of a sudden now have acquired wisdom, and now pontificating to this government how the government should govern. That is not, Nigerians are smarter than that. So all of this noise and sound and fury of rage and of hate will dissipate, I think, in the face of the good understanding of Nigerians about what they did and what it is they don't have the capacity to do going forward.
So there's been this conversation about whether President Tinubu contributed anything to former President Buhari's rise to power. Would you say President Tinubu make former President Buhari? Is that even a conversation?
No, it's not a conversation, because I think that is, that matter speaks for itself.
So why did you think Boss Mustafa downplayed the effort of President Tinubu?
Boss Mustafa was speaking from the abundance of his own ignorance about how Buhari emerged. He was appointed SGF. Does not mean he was a key player in the making of the president. If someone like Boss Mustafa would stand on a public podium and try to diminish the contribution of President Tinubu in that in the making of that presidency,
he says he was saying his truth.
Well, he can say his truth, but his truth amounts to nothing, right, but just utter, just senseless concoction of lies. And again, he was speaking from a point of bitterness. You could, when you listen to him, you could hear him speaking from that place of just pain that, to me, is utterly self-inflicted. He knows what is eating him up, and why he would come out to tell Nigerians, these Nigerians who know exactly Buhari's antecedents, his various attempts to be president that didn't work until the merger in 2013, 2014, that then led to his victory in 2015. And if there's any single most important factor in the emergence of President Buhari, I think everyone knows that it is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as he then was. Right. So that's not a controversy at all.
But how serious do you consider Atiku Abubakar's 2027 ambition is, considering his age, past losses, and new political alignments? Do you think Nigerians still see him as that credible alternative?
Nigerians never saw him as a credible alternative through the years of his run for the office of president. If they did ever see him as an alternative, let alone a credible alternative, by now he would have done at least one term, if not 2 terms. But Nigerians don't think that. This was a former vice president of whom his boss, President Olusegun Obasanjo, in a book, it wasn't just comments or commentary at a meeting or somewhere. What are we doing? We're doing nearly 7 megawatts.
This is President Tinubu's administration. No, I'm talking about 8 years of APC.
No, but even President Buhari moved our electricity production along. Everyone knows that. He moved it along. Now, President Tinubu is obviously moving it even further. But the point is that electricity was one of those commitments that the Obasanjo administration made under the power sector reform. And they pumped in a lot of money with no value. They left office with barely 1,000 plus megawatts of electricity for this country, despite all of the money. So look, I think that the point here is that Atiku Abubakar is an individual. He has convinced himself that he has a duty, if not a right, to be president. Nigerians have decided also that they do not want him. And so, we are not concerned about Atiku Abubakar for 2027. If he wants to run, now you can see the crisis that's already brewing, even within the ADC. Those of them who are telling him, look, this is, by this unwritten rotation, the power right now is in the south.
So,
yes.
Okay, let me allow you to land on that.
The power is in the south. But Atiku will not have that, because Atiku will run because Atiku thinks Nigeria is his vineyard, is his political vineyard. So he will listen to nobody. So even in the ADC, which is why I said to them that APC has no business, no reason to try to sow confusion in ADC, because already that party from the get-go is already mortally wounded by confusion. So we can't even do anything to make it worse.
And on the other hand, every political party has its own challenge, which you know. But of course, let me ask you, if the coalition focuses on, let's say, reforms, transparency and inclusion, areas where the APC has faced criticism in recent times. For instance, former Vice President was in Gombe, where he had continued, or has continued to tell his supporters that this and this reinstated his commitment to resisting election rigging, confronting what he describes as governance failure. And I wonder how the APC intends to counter that. I mean, you know, these are the things Nigerians want to hear.
Look, Nigerians are not gullible. Atiku Abubakar is someone who is a manipulator.
No. I won't allow you to call the former vice president a manipulator. And don't forget, his influence in Adamawa is multifaceted.
No. See, when I say a manipulator, I'm not trying to be rude. No. I'm not. You know, people manipulate facts. People manipulate, you know, any situation to make themselves look good. My point is that when Atiku Abubakar, who has a record of, you know, the kind of electoral engagement that is less than noble. Look, all I'm saying is that his record is out there. And so when he says that he's coming to fix the electoral system in Nigeria, when as vice president, he didn't lift a finger, all of the major electoral reform today that we're seeing, whether it's the, you know, electronic, you know, voting system and all of the innovations that we've seen in the electoral system, the, you know, Electoral Act, the amendments that have now, I think, brought us away from some of those, you know, darker days of electoral system. Those innovations were introduced by the Buhari government. You see, my point is that people who have had the opportunity to enact change, who failed to enact change, when they come along, when they are no longer able or in a position to enact change, and they now tell you how much change they are able to bring because they are no longer in that position, that is nothing but manipulation. Because you had that opportunity. You know, I can listen to someone who has never been in government, who says, oh, you know what, I dream about making our electoral system, you know, the best in the world. I would listen. But for an individual who has had an opportunity, had the instruments of power to promote change, enact change, who didn't? But, you know, when they come along and they begin to, you know, say these things, you must actually just listen to it.
But his supporters say, you know, when he was vice president, he didn't preside over a high inflation rate, he didn't preside over a high unemployment rate. What do you have to say to that?
And who is presiding over that? You know, if that is to suggest that the inflation rate we're dealing with today was, you know, instrumented idly, then whoever thinks that does not understand what's going on. Because the inflation that we're dealing with today are simply, you know, consequences of major policy decisions that were designed to correct the failure of the policies of the same people, the Atiku Abubakars. What they left undone, the economy that they left in tatters, the foundation that they never built, the phantom economy they prefer to operate in a transactional fashion, is what brought us to this point where this president then felt the compelling need to introduce policies to tackle problems created by them. So, you know, you can appropriate and report at the same time. You can't, you know, make capital out of your own failure. And then somebody who comes along to clean your mess, you blame him for raising dust. The dust will settle. This president has embarked on a course that is irreversible. And you know what I think I'm actually waiting for as a political actor? I'm waiting for ADC or Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi or any one of them, you know, El-Rufai or, you know, Rotimi Amaechi, to come before Nigerians to articulate their alternative vision for this country. I want them to come before Nigerians, come to your show or to a public space and say, this is what we're going to do different from what this president is doing in terms of, you know, ideas, you know, alternative policy, you know, prescriptions and all of that. They don't have any. And that's why so far, when you ask them that question, they put their tongue in their cheek and pretend like they're not hearing the question. They have not framed for Nigerians any alternative, you know, system, offering of thinking, of policy, thought, and direction that will depart from what this government is doing. For example, I'm waiting for any one of them to come and say, you know what, we're going to restore fuel subsidy. So we can actually wait to hear how that works. Or to say, hey, we're going to go back to dictating the value of the naira rather than allow the market to determine the value of our currency.
But one of them has continued to say production is the way to go for us to revive
what is this government
the
doing?
economy of this country.
But that's exactly what the government is doing.
All right.
This is what but this is the centerpiece of this government. And let me tell you why these guys are so inflamed at this point. They're inflamed because they realize they've checked all of their mediums of consultation. They found that if this president is left alone to finish his first term of 4 years, and maybe is handed another 4 years, they know that this country will be in a place where none of them will ever again aspire to leadership of this country.
But,
so I think this is all,
right. Dr. Walker, from the APC's point of view, is it realistic to achieve major national transformation in just one term?
It's difficult.
Why do you think Peter Obi and Amaechi are saying they need just one term?
No, because
to change this country.
No, that's just an act of desperation. I mean, even Peter Obi, in the interview he gave recently with, I think it was Channels Politics Today, he says, look, Egypt transformed the electricity sector in 5 years. Now, he didn't tell Nigerians, now, assuming that was true, he didn't say to Nigerians how long it took Egypt to plan that transformation. It's as if you simply wake up in the morning and then you snap your fingers and electricity is everywhere. No, see, that's not how it works. So when he says he is offering to do a term of 4 years, that is simply a statement of desperation, because he knows that, first of all, if he were to be handed that opportunity, which he's not going to get, because I don't think Nigerians are ready for that, I don't believe that Peter Obi, after 4 years, will pack his bags out of government house and head home. He won't.
You don't think he's a man of integrity?
Integrity. I mean,
what about Rotimi Amaechi? Peter Obi wasn't the only one who said that. Rotimi Amaechi also said the same thing.
Rotimi Amaechi said that because he's simply pandering to the idea that President Tinubu is doing 4 years of the southern rotation, and that after these 4 years, the South will have just 4 years before the North, of course, will expect power to rotate back to the North. That is the first reason. But anybody who is seriously making that argument is simply desperate to gain power, not because they can do anything transformative in 4 years. There's a reason the framers of our Constitution prescribed a 2-term of 4 years. That's 8 years in total for a president who gets re-elected, because they understand that for you to initiate policy, first of all, think policy, plan it, and then initiate it. It takes time. The gestation is not 4 years. It takes beyond 4 years, which is why also people talk about the continuum of government. That the people should, a president who has governed for even for 8 years, that presidents who come along after that should begin to. All right.
So when the APC continues to say this coalition will not work, is it because the party is bothered that the same script the APC played in 2015, 2019, 2023 is being tested and about to be replayed in 2027? I'm talking about the idea of coalition. I'm also talking about the idea of being in your party and working for another party. Because at the end of the day, Yesawike got rewarded, is now a minister in the APC administration. So PDP chieftains are saying, there's no problem, we'll stay in the PDP and work for the coalition.
See, people can do what they choose. The APC was born out of a merger of political parties. It was not born of individuals peeling away from the parties. Entire parties collapsed their structures to form the APC. So the APC was a merger. What they're calling a coalition is really amorphous. It's neither here nor there. So,
I think it's not a matter of nomenclature.
No, it's not nomenclature. I mean, it's like PDP now, for example, disbanding in order to join another party. That's a fusion of, a merger that's different from a coalition. What they're calling coalition is actually, like I said, it's just completely amorphous. However, I think that the difference between the APC and this, what we're witnessing now, and by the way, nothing I have said should be interpreted to mean that we are concerned. But But when they make statements and they posture, we're a political party, we also have a constitutional right and duty as well to respond. So, you know, when they issue a statement and I come with a response, it's not because we worried, as they always suggest. It's because we have a duty to respond, so Nigerians can have full information. But they can do what they want to do. But what I am saying is that they have yet, and I think that they will be unable to articulate any vision of development for our country that is different, not to talk about, you know, being superior to what this president is already implementing. And I think that's where they will be stuck, because, you know, they have nowhere to go. This president is already using the finest practices internationally by every economic measure to, you know, fashion his policies that we're implementing under the renewed agenda. And I think that there's no alternative out there for this, you know, coalition to articulate.
So what sectors would you say are quietly recording progress under President Tinubu but aren't getting the spotlight?
The agricultural sector, for example, like I said earlier, you know, our farmers are doing very well, who are, you know, producing, growing our food and really earning money. Even the inflationary trend we talk about actually ultimately works out in their favor. Now, our oil sector obviously is doing very well. We have now reached record production of oil, way above the mark of previous, you know, administrations. I think we're hitting, heading upwards of 2 million barrels now, which is, you know, great. Our Naira is doing well. You know, our fiscal managers are doing extremely well, managing our currency. Just of recent, I think a lot of those, you know, experts were celebrating what they're calling the decoupling of the Naira from, you know,
so what's the APC
revenues.
doing? What's the APC doing differently to improve public trust and visibility of progress?
You know, look, progress itself is self-evident. It comes, you know, if you're a student, I don't think you need a lot of, you know, urging to know that the government is doing something right with students. For a long time now, students have not been out of school as they, you know, usually were in years past. They've been in school. Many of them who couldn't pay fees are now able to access, you know, student loans. And, you know, just recently, I think many of our banks have announced that we can again, as we used to in the past, go back to use our Naira cards, you know, to pay for things abroad. So, you know, there's small things that are coming together that we also need to celebrate. It's not just about, you know, expecting that, you know, everything will resolve.
All right then, great conversation, Dr. Felix Moka, a National Publicity Secretary of the ruling All Progressives Congress. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope we have another conversation.
I hope so.
Later. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a great weekend, everyone.